Okay, let's dive into an idea that is so simple but so incredibly powerful that it literally changed how our modern world works. It's a story about a hidden enemy, one that cost companies billions, and how the war against it gave us the reliable products we all count on every single day.
So, our story kicks off with a puzzle. It's a real-world business case from back in the 80s, centered on a big American car maker. They were building this new automatic transmission, right? And to keep up with demand, they got a super important component from two different suppliers, one of their own factories in the US and another one over in Japan.
Now, this is where it gets weird. Both factories were given the exact same design, the same materials, the same engineering specs, and every single part they made was, technically speaking, in spec. It passed all the inspections. But once those cars were on the road, the transmissions built with the American parts were failing like crazy, leading to insane warranty costs. And the ones with the Japanese parts? Almost perfect.
So what on earth was going on? I mean, if every part from both factories was good to go according to the blueprints, why was one failing so badly and the other succeeding? This question drove engineers and executives nuts, and figuring out the answer, well, it started a revolution.
The first big clue to cracking this case was realizing that the whole way we thought about quality was just wrong. It wasn't about a simple pass or fail. The real enemy was something a lot sneakier.
You see, for decades, the old school way of thinking was that quality just meant fitness for use. You know, does it do the job? Does it meet the bare minimum standard? If the answer is yes, great, it's a quality product. But a new kind of radical idea came along that said true quality is actually the opposite of variability. In other words, the less variation a product has, the more consistent it is, the higher its quality, even if all the different versions are technically acceptable.
And when you look at the transmission data again with this new perspective, the answer just pops right out. The American parts, that's the wide, flat curve, they used up the entire allowable range. Some parts were a little big, some were a little small, they were all just good enough. But the Japanese parts, that tall, skinny curve, they were all packed super tightly around the perfect target value. That consistency, that lack of variability, that was the secret sauce. The parts fit together better, they wore out slower, and they just performed way more reliably.
And that is the key takeaway here. Real quality improvement isn't about having more inspectors to catch mistakes. It's about being a detective, hunting down and stamping out variability in the process itself. The goal is to make things more and more consistent, to hit the bullseye every single time, not just somewhere on the target.
Now, this whole philosophy, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was the life's work of a few absolute geniuses, statisticians and engineers, who saw what everyone else was missing. That variability was the root of all evil in business.
This idea grew over decades. It really got its start way back in the 1920s with a guy named Walter Shewhart at Bell Labs. But the concepts really caught fire when pioneers like W. Edwards Deming and Joseph Juran, who were pretty much ignored in the US at the time, were invited to Japan after the war. They taught Japanese managers how to focus on process and consistency, which, as we all know, led to the Japanese quality miracle and eventually modern stuff like Six Sigma.
Wed Edwards Deming's whole philosophy was built on some ideas that were, frankly, totally mind-blowing at the time. His most famous one was this: stop depending on inspection. He argued that by the time you inspect a product, it's too late. The quality, whether it's good or bad, is already baked in. You're just paying people to find mistakes that you already made. The real work is making the process so good that it doesn't make mistakes in the first place.
And his ideas went way beyond just the factory floor. He was adamant that quality was a management problem. It meant a total culture change. Choosing your suppliers based on quality, not just who is cheapest. It meant creating a culture where you're always trying to get better. And it meant empowering your workers to actually take pride in what they do, instead of just hitting a number.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do companies actually do this? How do you fight a war on variability? Well, it starts with a simple but profound shift in how you see things, and then you bring in some really powerful tools.
The very first, most important step is to see all work as a process. It doesn't matter if you're assembling a car, processing an insurance claim, or even making a cheeseburger at a fast food joint. It's all a series of steps with inputs and outputs. And once you see it as a process, you can measure it, you can understand it, and then you can control it.
And this is probably the most important tool for the job, the control chart. Think of it like a heartbeat monitor, an EKG for your business process. It shows you the natural rhythm, the random expected variation. But more importantly, it screams at you the moment something goes wrong, the second your process becomes unstable or unpredictable.
So in the late 1980s, these ideas were pushed to their absolute limit. The whole effort can be boiled down to one single, incredibly ambitious number: 3.4.
What's 3.4? That is the goal of a system called Six Sigma, which was pioneered at Motorola. It's a statistical way of saying your process is so ridiculously consistent, so tightly controlled, that it produces fewer than 3.4 defects for every million chances it has to make one. We're talking about a level of quality that is 99.9997% perfect. Just wow.
So how do you get there? Companies use a super disciplined 5-step method called DMAIC. First, you define the problem from your customer's point of view. Then you measure how the process is actually performing right now. Next, you analyze all that data to find the real root cause of the issue. After that, you improve the process by fixing that root cause. And finally, and this is crucial, you control the process to make sure the problem stays gone. It's basically the scientific method, just applied to business.
So why go through all this trouble? Why this obsessive focus on stats and charts and processes? Well, at the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing: money.
The gurus of quality proved you really have two choices for how you pay for it. You can pay now, up front with prevention costs. We're talking about investing in good design, solid training, and process control. Or you can pay way more later with what they call failure costs. Things like scrap material, rework, and, as that car company found out the hard way, huge warranty claims.
So here's the bottom line. Improving quality by reducing variability isn't a cost you have to absorb. It is one of the single most profitable investments a company can make. It's a direct attack on waste, and it stops those catastrophic failure costs before they ever happen. That was the real lesson of the two transmissions. The American company was paying for failure, while the Japanese company was investing in success. The funny thing is, once you start looking at the world this way, you'll see this battle against variability happening absolutely everywhere, from how consistent your morning coffee is to the reliability of the phone in your pocket. So I'll leave you with this question. As you go about your day, where do you see this principle winning, and where do you see it failing?